Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Pada Paramahamsa Bhaktarya Saraswata Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Pada Paramahamsa Bhaktarya Saraswata Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Natyakurti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namtari Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Krishna Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadhar Sri Vasta Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopina Samakun Radhakun Gumam Ki Jai. Verdama Dhamma Ki Jai. Mathura Dhamma Ki Jai. Nadvipa Dhamma Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dhamma Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Yangamaya Ki Jai. Gangamaya Ki Jai. Sanventa Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna.
I'll take a real old game for
We got Bhagavad Gita class.
I'll be right back.
This is forever a promise. Let's see here. Hare Krishna. Bhagavad Gita class. Start with our introduction prayer. Page 1. Amadanya Karmandasya Janya Janya Shavakya Shakamulita Mina Tasme Sudurve Namaha Chaitanya Manobishtam Sahitam Yana Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayam Darati Swapadatikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapara Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavascha Shri Rupa Sagrajaitam Sahagana Raghunatha Navitam Sasajevam Savetam Sahutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Saha Gana Lalita Shri Vishakana Vitamascha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namasute Tapa Kamchana Gorangi Rade Vindastastare Vispanu Sute Devi Pranamane Hare Hare Panchakapatara Buryascha Pipa Sindhu Bhaya Devacha Patitanam Pavanambayo Vaishnavayo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasti Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Let's see here, we were chapter 3, I believe it was, on Karma Yoga. Left off at verse 11, so we're starting at verse 12 today. We're going to go back to college. We do 11 verses at a time. Read the Sanskrit and translation. And go back to the first verse that we read and do the purport. That's the way we hear the entire stream of Bhagavad Gita in 3 months' time. Text 12. Ishtam bhogan hi bhodeva dasyante yakya avitaha tirdattan apradaya vayo yohute yohukyate sena evasaha. Translation. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna sacrifice, supply all necessities to man. But he who enjoys these gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Text 13. Yagyas Shistas Sina Santo Uchanyate Sarva Kapiraske Urjante Deva Agam Papa Ye Pachante Atma Karanat. Translation. Devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal and sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. Text 14. Anad bhavanti bhutani pragyadya anasambhavaya yajya bhavati prajanyo yajya karma samubhavaha. Translation. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which is produced from rains. Rains are produced by performer of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born out of prescribed duties. Text 15. Karma Brahma Bhava Vidhi Brahma Sakara Samudbhavam Tasmat Sarva Gatam Brahma Nityam Yagye Pratishitam. Translation. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas. And the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. Text 16. Evam pravatitam chakram nanuvartra yitaya agyayo indraya aramo mogam partasa shivati. Translation. My dear Arjuna, a man who does not follow this prescribed Vedic system of sacrifice certainly leads a life of sin. A person delighting only in the senses lives in vain. Text 17. Yasta atma raptir ivasya atma triptascha manava atmane evacha santutas tasya karmya na vidyate. Translation. One who is, however, taking pleasure in the self, who's loomed in the self, and enjoys in and is satisfied with the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. Text 18. Nagyatasya kritinasto nakchena hitkashana nachasya sarvabhuteshu kaschid artha iratarshaya. Translation. A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. Text 19. Tasmada sakta satatam karyam karma samachara asakto ye acharan karma param apnati parashava. Translation. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. Text 20. Kamanagahi samsidam ashiti janakarayaha dukasagraham askivati sampasyam kartum arashi. Translation. Even kings like Janaka and others attain the perfectional stage by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. Text 21. Yadyada charyati tasya tata ivatara yajana saya pramanam prudate uttata anuvadrate ratate tate. Translation: whenever action is performed by a great man, common men follow his footsteps, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Our final text this evening, text 22. Name pardasyati kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavatatam avatavadyam Varta eva cha karmani. Translation: O son of Krishna, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in work. Turning to text 12. Translation. Report by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation: in charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, supply all necessities to man. But he who enjoys these gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Report. The demigods are authorized supplying agents on behalf of the Supreme Personality Godhead, Vishnu. Therefore, they must be satisfied by the performance of prescribed yajnas. In the Vedas, there are different kinds of yajnas prescribed for different kinds of demigods, but all are ultimately offered to the Supreme Personality Godhead. The one who cannot understand what the Personality Godhead is, sacrifice the demigods is recommended. According to the different material qualities of the persons concerned, different types of yajnas are recommended in the Vedas. Worship of different demigods is also the same basis, namely according to different qualities. For example, the meat eaters are recommended to worship the goddess Kali, the ghastly form of material nature. And before the goddess, the sacrifice of animals is recommended. But for those who are in the mode of goodness, the transcendental worship of Vishnu is recommended. But ultimately, all yajnas are meant for a gradual promotion to the transcendental position. For ordinary men, at least 5 yajnas known as Pancha Maha Yajna are necessary. One should know, however, that all the necessities of life that the human society requires are supplied by the demigod agents of the Lord. No one can manufacture anything. Take, for example, all the eatables of human society. These eatables include grains, fruits, vegetables, milk, sugar, etc. Etc. Oh, my eyes are playing tricks on me. Etc. For the persons in the mode of goodness, and also eatables for the non-vegetarians like meats, etc. None of which can be manufactured by men. Then again, take for example heat, light, water, air, etc., which are also necessities of life. None of them can be manufactured by human society. Without the Supreme Lord, there can be no profuse sunlight, moonlight, rainfall, breeze, etc., without which no one can live. Obviously, our life is dependent on supplies from the Lord, even for our manufacturing enterprises. We require so many raw materials like metal, sulfur, mercury, manganese, and so many essentials, all of which are supplied by the agents of the Lord, with the purpose that we should make proper use to them to keep ourselves fit and healthy for the purpose of self-realization, leading to the ultimate goal of life, namely liberation from the material struggle for existence. This aim of life is attained by performance of yajnas, yajnas. If we forget the purpose of human life and simply take supplies from the agents of the Lord for sense gratification, we become more and more entangled in material existence, which is not the purpose of creation. Certainly we become thieves, and therefore we are punished by the laws of material nature. The society of thieves can never be happy because they have no aim in life. The gross materials feed with no ultimate goal of life. They're simply directed to sense gratification, nor do they have knowledge of how to perform yagyas. Lord Chaitanya, however, inaugurated the easiest performance of yagya, namely the Sankirtan yagya, which can be performed by anyone in the world who accepts the principle of Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Charge of the various necessities of life, demigods being satisfied with performance of yajna, sacrifice, supply all necessities to man. But he who enjoys these gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. Yes, and pretty much we're all thieves here in the age of Kali. There was a time that in previous ages where the demigods were able to supply everything. There was once an age that everything was supplied. It was just reached out, good for the taking. Take the fruit, eat. It was all there. First yagya, the first yuga. Everything was perfect. We didn't have to have so much strive to fulfill our senses and whatnot. At that time, it was very easy to go out and find a secluded place and meditate for 10,000 years. Because the food was all around. You had everything supplied, rains, and water, everything. Everything was pure. And now here we are in the age of Kali, and let's see here. We got 8 billion people in the world. How many of the 8 billion people are actually performing sacrifices to the demigods? Maybe a handful. Krishna consciousness, I think the last time I read, it was in ISKCON, it's like around 1 million devotees. That's quite a few yagyas. Still, there's over 8 billion people stealing from Krishna, stealing from the demigods. No wonder the world's so messed up. This age of Kali, it's so hard to do anything without in this age. You can no longer go out and find a secluded place and meditate for 10,000 years, get your yoga system perfect. Because the performance of sacrifices are no longer being done. We're having to strive for all kinds of crazy things. I remember times in my life where I decided, try to find a secluded place to go meditate, try to make a retreat out of it. Sometimes I would, try to strive for maybe if I could just go out for a couple weeks or a month, find a nice place. One of the areas I was in, I was down in Arizona, Lake Havasu, Arizona. I used to love going out hiking in the desert all the time, especially in the winter season, because in the winter season it was like nice perfect days, 70 degrees outside. That was winter time in the desert of Arizona. Nighttime would get a little bit cooler, get down into the 40s and 50s, 40s being on the really cold side, and 50s overnight. It was interesting after spending so many years there in Arizona, you get accustomed to the heat, so that those 40s and 50 degrees felt really cold, like icy cold. But still, I wanted to go out and I thought to myself, I'm going to go out to the desert for a couple weeks, take some water with me, and go out and meditate. Find a nice secluded place with beautiful views, and I'm not going to move from there for 2 weeks. Gather things, I had to,
haul a lot of water with me, for 2 weeks, man. I think I ended up with hauling a 5-gallon thing of water. And then you had to have, a little bit of food, so I, mainly dried fruit and whatnot, that I took with me, and clean clothes, and man, backpack was heavy. Whew. My word. So I went out hiking, to find that secluded place. Kind of hard to get lost in the area I was at, because to the east of me was Lake Havasu, Lake Mead. You can't go any further than the lake. And to the west of me was the mountains. California side. And I didn't really want to go past the mountains. Besides, the mountains was just a whole nother chore to try to get up and over. So it was kind of contained to this valley. And after my first day of hiking, I was just so tired from hiking and carrying that heavy backpack and load. Oh man, it was just so heavy. I said, okay, this is a good spot. I'm not going to move from here. I'm going to spend my next 2 weeks here. Unpack everything. Find a nice little spot and start meditating, and oh my God, what is that bug? There was this crazy looking bug, it looked like a cross between a scorpion and a spider. I've never come across one of these before, but they're called sun spiders in Arizona. And they have a tendency to be attracted towards shadows in the heat of the day, so they'll actually come up, act like they're actually following you, because they're actually following your shadow. But this sucker was like the size of a small saucer, like a teacup saucer plate. Oh my gosh, it was ugly. I got up and I started running away. I'm like, what is it? I don't want any part of this. And of course, it was following my shadow, trying to stay in the shade. So here I am running around in circles, trying to run away from this sun spider. Oh man, I just wanted to meditate. So finally, it went away. So I tried to sit back down and try to meditate again, and and starts, you get thirsty, and you have something to drink, and you get hungry, you get, have a little bit of dry fruit to eat. And oh my God, there's a scorpion. Get up again, because it's coming right towards me. My word, how do the yogis ever find peace to meditate with all these bugs? Bugs everywhere, especially out there in the desert.
They use the scientific process of sitting on a seat. It's neither too high, neither too low. That's made of acacia grass and tiger skin. It repels the insects, the snakes, and the tigers.
Really? It does?
Yeah, that's what probably.
Would you like to speak that in the microphone here?
Oh no, I got it.
Okay, yeah.
You go ahead and repeat it. It's in the microphone.
Yeah. All right, Pujari was just telling us, you find a seat that's neither too high or too low. Sit on cushy grass and whatnot.
Tiger skin.
What was that?
Yeah, tiger skin.
And tiger skin.
Or deer skin.
Deer skin. Yeah, I believe deer skin is like a natural snake repellent from what I was reading. But yeah, so I didn't have all those kinds of crazy things with me. I was just out there like Havasu trying to rough it. But the night comes. Oh man. Nighttime out in the desert, you thought there was crazy bugs during the day. Oh my God, there was crazy looking things at night. But I brought a small tent, and I zipped myself in, and I didn't want to leave that tent all night. Then there were coyotes. outside. You hear the coyotes, fighting outside and howling and whatnot. Yeah, try and find a secluded place to go meditate in this day and age. It's not the best idea. There's another time I was up in Alaska. Found a nice little place. I was up in Petersburg, Alaska, and I was camping out. Now this place, it rained all the time. This is considered a national rainforest. How much rain they got. I mean, it rained and rained and rained. And it's really hard to find a secluded place, dry. You had to do all kinds of things just to stay dry, just to keep the campsite dry. And then there was the bugs again, all kinds of bugs. Then the bears. Oh yes, bears. So it's really, really hard to, in this day and age of Kali, go out and find a secluded place or a sacred place to go meditate at. But because of the work that Srila Prabhupada did in his performance of his yajna and the performance of his sacrifice in his life, we have these wonderful places now, these temples, these sacred places that we can come, do mantra meditation, the Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Do the mantra meditation. Because we can't find anything better outside of this. You try, it's a lot of work. We run out of food and water in no time. You go out to a secluded place, you gotta deal with bugs, you gotta deal with snakes, you gotta deal with animals, all kinds of things. But here in the temple, we have the perfect opportunity to come here every single day and perform our yajnas, our sacrifices. Getting up at early in the morning, an hour and a half before dawn, that's a yajna, that's a sacrifice. Coming in and performing and singing to the deities, Mangalarti, that's a yajna, that's a sacrifice. Doing our service for Krishna, that's a yajna, that's a sacrifice. Whether it be washing dishes, whether it be sweeping the floor, washing the walls, cooking boga, going shopping for boga, running a temple, dressing the deities. All these things are sacrifices. All these things are yajna that we're performing. So we can't do anything in life without some sort of sacrifice. Those who want to become, expert athletes, the best athletes in the world, they have to go through a lot of sacrifice. They have to spend a lot of their time that they would rather be watching TV or going to the movies or, doing other forms of sense enjoyment. They're the ones who are becoming the best athletes are in the gym, exercising. Those that are wanting to become, the best in their field of knowledge. They're out there, cracking the books, performing that sacrifice. But they're doing it for themselves. They're stealing. Just like the athletes, they're stealing. They're stealing from the demigods, they're stealing from Krishna. If it's not being done in Krishna's service, if it's not being done in service to the demigods. And sacrifice for the demigods. So it's all being stolen if we're not offering it to Krishna. Here's those that there's a lot of silly things that you find people sacrificing for. Look at the amount of people that go up and want to climb the world's tallest mountain every year. Let's go climb Mount Everest. Yeah, it's already been done, but let's go climb it anyways. Think about all the sacrifice that you have to do to get to climb that mountain. The training you have to endure, go through, climbing other mountains first. You just don't want to go climb Mount Everest first time around without any climbing experience. And the actual climb itself, I mean, they still got bodies up there. People that died. It's just too hard to bring down the bodies. So there's, grave sites all throughout, going up to Mount Everest. A lot of these, really extreme mountain journeys, like for example, like up in Alaska, Denali National Park. They've got places there where they've got a problem with all the people, climbing the mountain. Now they're trying to figure out what to do with the human waste because it's frozen solid up there. People go up there and they kind of dig a hole in the snow and do their thing, relieve themselves. But since it's frozen wasteland up there in the high mountains, it's not being degraded. It's not being what I'm trying to think of the word for. Not going through its natural process of decomposing. So it's just building up there. But yeah, sacrifice, there's not a thing that you can do in this world without having some sort of sacrifice. The lovely thing in ISKCON and Krishna consciousness, we have all kinds of sacrifice that we can perform for the pleasure of Krishna. That's one thing about this movement is there's no unemployment in this movement because there is more than enough service to go around. If you think you don't have enough service, you're not looking hard enough because there's so much service in this movement, so much to go around. And that's the thing is when you develop the taste for this sacrifice, for this service, when you start developing the taste, you start challenging yourself. I want more of it. I want to do more yoga. I want to do more sacrifice. I want to do more service. Because that taste is so sweet. Even though many days you're dog tired, trying to stay awake. You're still trying to figure out, how can I fit just a little bit more into my day? Because developing the taste for Krishna consciousness, for service, for the Lord's holy names, most people don't have patience. Most people aren't sticking to the regulative principles. Most people aren't following the Guru's instructions. All these things are very important. It's very hard to make progress in Krishna consciousness. Very hard to develop the taste without, finding a Guru, following his instructions, filling up your life with service, chanting your 16 rounds a day. And just sticking to it. Being steady in your service. Because in many ways, people who start out in Krishna consciousness, people who come into this movement, many ways it seems bitter at first. We're so used to gratifying our material senses that's been going on for millions of lifetimes. There's a lot of karmic reaction built up. A lot of the karmic reaction is, these are the senses that you've been given to enjoy. So in many ways we are powerless, but to try to enjoy these senses. That's where surrender comes from. Surrender to Krishna. You gotta be asking Krishna each and every day, oh please Krishna, increase my desire for you and you only. I want to desire you more than my other material desires. By doing this, inquiring from the Guru, following his instructions, keeping up with your sadhana, doing your 16 rounds, filling up with service, as much service as you can, that's the key. You gotta, if you're not filling up with service and you have idle hands and idle mind, idle hands and idle mind, they're just going to naturally want to go to sense gratification. Naturally wants to be lazy, naturally wants to, I could, I don't have any service right now, so I'll just sleep. It's a slippery slope by not being filled up with service. Because then you're having to deal with your own mind. So by filling up with service, all the sacrifice that you're making, it all comes back. Krishna doesn't forget. Any questions or comments so far? Move on to text 13. Translation. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. Purport. Devotees of the Supreme Lord, or the persons who are in Krishna consciousness, are called santas. And they are always in love with the Lord, as it is described in the Brahma Samhita. Primam jana chaturita bhakti vilochanena santa sadeva hridayeshu vilokadyanti. The santas be always in compact of love with the Supreme Personality Godhead, Govinda, the giver of all pleasures, or Mukunda, the giver of liberation, or Krishna, the all-attractive person, cannot accept anything without first offering it to the Supreme Person. Therefore, such devotees always perform yogyas in different modes of devotional service, such as Sravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Charanam, etc. And these performances of yagyas keep them always aloof from all kinds of contamination of sinful association in the material world. Others who prepare food for self or sense gratification not only thieves, but also the eaters of all kinds of sins. How can a person be happy if he is both a thief and sinful? It's not possible. Therefore, in order for people to become happy in all respects, they must be taught to perform the easy process of Sankirtan Yajna in full Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there can be no peace or happiness in the world. And that's the thing, even food eaten in the mode of goodness. If it's not offered to Krishna first, it's full of sin. Why is it full of sin? Because there are jivas. Jivas that had to die so you could satisfy your tongue, so you could satisfy your stomach. That's why it's so full of sin. But if it's offered to Krishna first, it becomes purified of that. You just offered all those jivas to Krishna. That went into making the food, which is now prasada after it's been offered to Krishna. Everything has got to be offered through Krishna. Everything. whatever action we are performing needs to be in service to Krishna. Because we're not here to continue to bind ourselves to this material world. Any actions done outside of Krishna consciousness, outside of service, you'll get good karmic reactions, you'll get bad karmic reactions. There are those that, try to accumulate good karma, all the good karma in the world, so they can have a good life the next lifetime. That's nice. It's kind of like, getting a nicer jail cell. A jail cell with gold bars, gold-plated toilet. You're still trapped. You're still entangled in the material world, even with all that good karma. Even your prison food might be better this next lifetime. But eventually, that reward is used up. That's why here it's important to be going through your guru and performing service to Krishna, to be purified. Following the guru's instructions is like having a magnifying glass. Magnifying glass, when you take a magnifying glass and on a bright sunny day and you get that beam of light just right to catch leaves on fire or paper on fire. Same thing with the guru. Guru is your magnifying glass. Following his instructions, keeping up with your sadhana, chanting your 16 rounds, you're focusing the guru like a magnifying glass to get that Krishna's mercy focused in on yourself. The more you give of yourself, the more Krishna gives of himself. Any questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu.
I like Hare Krishna. It's not working.
Want to try this one?
Yeah. I liked what you mentioned about the animals in the forest when you were meditating, because there's a story from Radhanath Swami in his book, and he's given a few talks about his time in the Himalayas and near the river Ganges when he was living as a mendicant and an ascetic. So one of the stories that he talked about was that he was with another yogi, and the yogi didn't speak a word of English, but somehow or other he was able to communicate to Radhanath Swami that the bears and the panthers and the snakes, they're all around you. And if you show any sign of fear or don't respect them at all, they will kill you. So give them their space and they'll give you yours. I just thought that was really nice because it reminded me of, Radhanath Swami. Thank you for reminding me of Radhanath Swami.
Yes, they're definitely all out there. I remember I was camping out in Petersburg, and every night I would hear a bear outside my campsite. Luckily, in that particular area is mainly black bears. And black bears, they're like a big dog. If you're loud enough and aggressive enough, they'll take off running. they're actually vegetarians. They don't eat meat. They like to eat berries and whatnot. Grizzly bears, on the other hand, that's a different story. They do eat meat. And luckily, I didn't have any grizzly bear encounters. But they say if you ever encounter a grizzly bear and they attack, you get attacked by a grizzly bear, play dead. Why do you want to play dead? You got this big bear, trying to tear you apart. Well, like I said, grizzly bears like to eat meat. But they like to eat their meat partially decayed. So, if you play dead with a grizzly bear, they think that you're dead, they'll leave you alone. Then it'll come back in a couple days when your flesh has been partially decayed and will finish you off. So that's why they say to play dead with a grizzly bear, because the grizzly bear will eventually wander off and come back later. But yes, this world is a crazy place, and it's not safe out there to try to find God on your own. It's not safe out there to try to meditate on your own. Trying to find a secluded place. There are many people have tried it. In this day and age, it just doesn't work out that good. Because you always have that. Always have the things about, food and water and, proper, shelter to live under. All these things, cumbersome. Let's see here. Text 14. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains produced by performance of yajna sacrifice, and yajnas is born of prescribed duties. Lord, Srila Baladev, Vidya Bhusana, a great commentator on the Bhagavad Gita, writes as follows. Ye Indra Agna Tayavashtitam Yagyam Sarvashparam Vishnum Yacharya Tapsesh Tesham Anati Tena Tade Yantram Sambatyante Desam Santa Sarveshwar Rasya Bhakta Sarva Giveshar Anadi Kala Vidarar Atman Dubhava Pratibana Dakar Nikila Papir Vimutyante. The Supreme Lord, who is known as Yajna Purusha, or the personal beneficiary of all sacrifices, is the master of all demigods who serve him as the different limbs of the body serve the whole. Demigods like Indra, Chandra, Varuna, etc. are appointed officers who manage material affairs, and the Vedas direct sacrifices to satisfy the demigods, so that they may be pleased to supply air, light, and water sufficiently to produce food grains. When Lord Krishna is worshipped, the demigods who are different limbs of the Lord are also automatically worshipped. Therefore, there is no separate need to worship the demigods. For this reason, the devotees of the Lord who are in Krishna consciousness offer food to Krishna and then eat, a process which nourishes the body spiritually. That looks like our time for this evening. Bhagavad Gita ki jai!